Hey everyone, welcome back to the All Sports Pass. My name's Eli. We got Max here. Um, Welcome back to another video. And honestly, hard to believe we're doing this video already. The Tennessee Volunteers season in review. Man, this season's flown by. Um, but before we get into it, of course, hope y'all had a very amazing Christmas and an amazing New Year. Um, so blessed to see 2026, and we can't wait to see what 2026 has in store. And yeah, we got a lot to talk about, but before we get into it, you already know I got to start off the verse of the day. Today's verse comes from Romans 12:2, and it says, "Do not conform to the pattern of this world, but be transformed by the renewing of your mind. Then you will be able to test and improve what God's will is, His good, pleasing, and perfect will." Will. If And before we start, leave a like, subscribe for more college football content. Without further ado, let's begin. So, of course, if y'all had saw the Tennessee schedule predictions video, you probably know that probably mine and Connor's picks were way off. Max actually had the most closest one to this season, and all I got to say is this though is that I feel like this season it was good winning, but the thing about it is there are games that Tennessee should not have lost that they just lost. And another thing I also want to mention is that this is also Tennessee's last year with Adidas because back in not Adidas at Nike, because back in August they announced a 10-year deal with Adidas starting in 2026, and so all I got to say is I just hope the Adidas uniforms don't look as bad as the early 2010s ones. But from what I've seen, like Tennessee will have full on creative control, which is the good thing. And the other thing is this is that I also found out that Adidas was able to get Penn State over to their side, which really was a bit surprising because Penn State, of course, a Nike stronghold since 1993, and Adidas managed just to get them on their side, and that just comes show that like on the brand apparel and stuff. But like, and as of this video, of course, there's still no release of like the still no release of the jerseys for the new season. Granted, it is only January, so yeah. But so far, it's going to be interesting to see. Like, it's going to be sad to see Nike go, but I'm excited to see what Adidas has in store. And yeah. Um, but however, another thing I want to talk about for this season is, of course, Tennessee going 8-5, which you take a look here. This is the second worst season under Josh Heupel in terms of record. The first one was a 7-6 season back in 2020, which was 2021, which was Heupel's first year as the Vols head coach. He ended up, of course, they ended up also going to the Music City Bowl that year, where, of course, that controversial loss to Purdue, and then yeah. So we end up just seeing a whole bunch of struggles this year for this team, and mostly seeing the struggle that Tennessee had was mostly on the defensive side. And like, of course, you had Jermon McCoy didn't play this whole season. You had Ricky Gibson get injured after at the Syracuse game, and then basically the defense was just leaving holes like crazy. They like weren't able to really get the stops in and everything. And as I mentioned, I feel like this defense was also part of the reason why that some of these games were lost, and eventually resulted in the firing of Tim Banks, and then you also get some other guys coming in from Penn State as of course Tennessee hired Jim Knowles, the Penn State defensive coordinator. They get Anthony Poindexter as safeties coach, and and he's also the co-defensive coordinator, and Andrew Jackson, not the president, by the way. Sorry, I just had to make a joke there. But Andrew Jackson is LEO slash defensive line coach, and then it was also announced that that of course Willie Martinez would not be retained, and yeah, so basically it's going to be interesting to see what happens with this now, but for Tennessee, they've got a long road ahead of them because if they end up, because, and I'm going to be honest, the Tim Banks thing, I wasn't really surprised about because Tim just making a bunch of questionable calls as defensive coordinator, and Willie Martinez, just the cornerbacks coach, ended up, and also I'm trying to avoid the filler words here, guys, so just bear with me. But Willie Martinez just, I don't think, was able to coach to his full potential this year. And even though I might have some people in the comments saying, but he was without Jermon McCoy, he was without Ricky Gibson, your job is to get the cornerbacks ready for the game. And it don't matter who it is, And I just feel like, Willie wasn't able to do that. Just wasn't really able to do that with really all he really had. And of course, the thing about Tennessee though is like they go from going into close games to the beginning of the season to then end up having some bad losses, and that's all I got to say. But Tennessee is going to have to make some changes heading into the 2026 season, which actually, speaking of that, on the schedule release video, we'll actually be doing that probably probably after the transfer portal, maybe. So yeah, and of course, what are your thoughts on the staff, Max, on the new hirings?
I think that we're in a good position right now. Except I think this year is going to be Josh Heupel's make or break year. Personally,
Yeah. There's also another thing I'm going to say here is that with Heupel, though, you got to realize that even good teams have off years, and there's really no way around it. But the thing that really for Tennessee is like they're just trying to look for the more consecutive bad years, and I think one bad season is not going to put Heupel on the hot seat because really, going 8-5, really, but along with like that ball game, which we'll talk about here in a few minutes, going 8-5, still 8 wins is still a winning season, but it's not like up to expectation. And it's like I also said before that for some reason, if you looked at Tennessee's trend, they seem to not really have too much success in the odd numbered years than they do in the even numbered years. And so it's just a bit of a trend there from what I'm seeing. But yeah, so you just never know. Next year may be a good year because it's an even number year. You just never know. Um, but of course, getting into these games here, though, is the fact that Tennessee, of course, going to Atlanta for the Aflac kickoff game, and they destroy Syracuse 45-26, and Tennessee put up 17 points in the first quarter. Follow that up with a 14-point second quarter, 7-point third quarter, and a 7-point fourth quarter to, of course, round up to a 45-26 win with them. We take a look at Syracuse, though. Like, Syracuse ended up not even, like, kind of struggling a bit this year. And they also, so I really think that with Syracuse, it just, like, they ended up not really being too good in my, like, this year. Like, they ended up, only finishing 3-9 on the season, of course, with one of the losses being to a 2-10 Boston College. And yeah, so, but I will say though, Syracuse, it was a make or break to show like really what Aguilar could do, but at the end of the day, we take a look back at it that it wasn't really a good win for the Vols, and it also kind of exposed the dents in the defense at that game with with of course the with of course allowing those 26 points. And then we take a look more as we go into the coming weeks as Tennessee plays ETSU, which is FCS, and ETSU ends up losing 72. Tennessee wins 72-17, and then I'm gonna just put this in here for this here as ETSU ended up their overall was a 7-5, which in the FCS is pretty good, and Tennessee wins 72-17. And then, of course, the next week, Georgia, Tennessee ends up looking like they're about to win that game, and then, of course, every Vol fan is going to hate me for saying this. Max Gilbert, yeah, just missing the field goal, and then we start to see more of okay, like we were able to hang with Georgia, we were able to hang with the eventual SEC champs. What does Tennessee take out of this? And they play, and what happens is that the next week they're playing host to UAB, winning 56-24. And when I'm taking a look at UAB here, because keep in mind, like UAB is one of those one-off teams for Tennessee every few years. Take a look at UAB here. Their overall was a 4-8 season, and but however, like Tennessee seems to have, like Tennessee, of course, allowing those 24 points as well. And the thing about it is, the thing that I realized is Tennessee allowed UAB to score more points. You know, a 4-8 UAB allowed them to score more points than a 3-9 Syracuse by just 2 points. So Tennessee they also were just basically like, I'll take a look at this here. There's not really a blowout win this season for the Vols. And if you're wondering what I mean by blowout is because some of these teams, you take a look at, well, I mean, there is a 42-9 win over New Mexico State, but that's a group of 5 schools, so that's why I don't want to talk about them too much. And then after the UAB game, they go to Mississippi State, which was an overtime victory. And all I got to say is this, is that they got lucky against Mississippi State. Like, they could have actually won the game. They actually could have won the game by getting down the field a little bit, and I don't know if there was a miscommunication or not, but Josh Heupel had 2 timeouts left, and he didn't take either one of them. And then they straight up have to throw a Hail Mary. It doesn't convert. They go to overtime, and of course they score on the first play of overtime. They hold Mississippi State to the last play of the game. Mississippi State throws it to the end zone, and it's incomplete. Tennessee escapes Starkville, and they're 5-1 on the season at that point. And I'm sorry, 4-1 on the season. Then they come back home to Neyland. They play Arkansas, and this is and don't let the scoreboard fool you, because even though like Tennessee has had struggles with Arkansas in the past, this was not really that good, because it was basically a down to the wire score, and they even they nearly blew a lead as well, because I believe they were up like 34-17 with like 5 minutes left in the fourth, and then Arkansas ends up getting it down to 34-31, and then a 2-10 Arkansas to finish the season. seems to me like there's just so much going on there, and yeah, so and then after Arkansas, they then travel to Alabama, losing 37-20, and of course some of the play calling I honestly did not really I just think didn't go in Tennessee's way. Of course, with that play to end the half, it ended up being a 99-yard pick six, and that basically just set the tone for the night. But there was also one where Joey Aguilar also got a safety as well, and so because of that, that basically means on that it's basically going to be so basically on that basically just the safety just kind of set the tone for the night, and Tennessee just was not able to recover. The closest they got was actually when they had was actually when they tied it at 7 apiece, and then that was it. So yeah, and now we're gonna go on to Kentucky here. They end up taking their anger out on Alabama against Kentucky. They won 56-34. Or Kentucky not really a strong team, and eventually, the way the season went for Kentucky, they fired Mark Stoops, and so that's really just curious. Are you still here?
Yeah.
Sorry, I just didn't know if you were frozen or not. Yeah, but Kentucky ends up, going. Sorry, guys. It's just loading on here. Kentucky just ends up not having a good season whatsoever, and man, we're just getting the loading E screen of death from ESPN, aren't we? Yeah. But Kentucky just ends up not having a good season in general, really, and it eventually leads to Mark Stoops getting fired, and so Tennessee, of course, leaving Lexington with a 56-34 win, and yeah, so then they play host to Oklahoma. They lose 33-27, and I'm going to be honest, this is one of the games that I said they should not have lost because really, I think that Oklahoma. Now, don't get me wrong, Oklahoma's really good, but I just feel like with it being in Neyland and of course with Heupel, of course, basically dominating them in 2024, it it should have been, I think, a win for Tennessee. And I even said on the schedule predictions video that I anticipate this to be a win for Tennessee because I simply just did not think that Oklahoma was really a good road team. That's really what I thought. But they ended up coming in winning 33-27. And also, let's just see if I'm going to try this one more time before we get on to the rest of the games here. Let's try this one more time before we get to the rest of the games here. But Kentucky finished with a 5-7 season, going 2-6 in the conference. So yeah, and this was of course, 34 points allowed by Tennessee defense as well. Then of course they play New Mexico State, which was a 42-9 win, and I have to say is that New Mexico State, I feel like, it should have been a blowout by more points, in my opinion. That's just what I think. But just ultimately just wasn't meant to be. But to say this here that the defense's best game of the season was against New Mexico State, that basically makes you start to say, okay, it's not just you start to say, okay, it's not just the defense, it's the defensive coordinator or somebody because of course with that, you know, Tennessee, if they're going to succeed, they need to do good on defense basically, and that's just something that ended up not really working out too well. Now we get to the last two regular season games. Tennessee, of course, going down to Florida and winning in Gainesville for the first time since '03. and with a 31-11 victory. And then, of course, they come back to Neyland to end the season against Vanderbilt, which was a 45-24 loss to Vanderbilt. Then they end up playing the Music City Bowl against Illinois, and they lost 30-28 to Illinois. All I gotta say is that I also will say, because like some of the opt outs as well, like I think he had a bunch of and had a few inexperienced guys on the team on the field against Illinois that just really kind of set the tone for the whole game. And now I do understand it's a good learning experience for them, but I just feel like that, and it was a close game, but I just feel like finishing 8-5 really just this wasn't really a season up to Tennessee's standards really. And I'll have to ask you, Max, on this schedule. What on earth are your thoughts on like the final results from these games?
Uh, I kind of knew that was going to happen, honestly, just because, like, Oklahoma was like really good. Obviously, my team was a Heisman candidate. Then, like, you look at that Alabama, Ty Simpson was a Heisman candidate.
Mm-hmm.
But I think the last that I hit the most was Georgia because like after that game, like this 10 C team just didn't play the same.
Mm-mm. And I feel like, of course, another thing about Tennessee is that I think they need to realize that you have more games left in the season, more games, that you need to play. I think that Tennessee needs to go out there and, of course, no pun intended, give their all for Tennessee. But, like, I feel like they let that one game really define them for the rest of the season and just ended up having way too many issues. Like I'm going to say defensively, because really, in my opinion, the line for the offense was amazing. It's just I feel like just some overthrown passes and the receivers just not really being able to be connected with Aguilar, um, with Aguilar's passes. That's just really what kind of hurt the offense a little bit. For the defense, though, allowing too many easy plays is really what caused so much issues this year, in my opinion. All right, and now we're going to go into the transfer portal here. Of course, Tennessee already getting an incoming transfer in Quamos. Sorry if I said his name wrong, or Quamos, I think is how you say it. I don't know. Um, he is a transfer from Kansas State, and in his in his 2025 season stats, because he's a safety, um, 41 total tackles, 31 solo, 10 assisted, one sack, one forced fumble, and then two interceptions. So basically, I think that's pretty good for the defense, really. Tennessee's needing a safety, and I feel like getting some safeties are really what's gonna really happen here. I'm sorry, I think that getting a safety is really gonna boost the defense a whole lot, and I think it's gonna do them really good in the future in 2026. And of course, there are 23 outgoing transfers. Of course, I'm gonna name them here: Brian Grant, William Satterwhite, Jaden Lofton, Emmanuel Okoye, Max Gilbert. No big surprise there. He, as Max just basically was, as Max, I feel like was just kind of pressured into the portal really after this season. And then Caleb Herring, Ricky Gibson the third, which Ricky I honestly did not expect to see him go into the portal. Yeah, and then Amari Jefferson, not a big surprise there. Because the thing about Amari is that he actually went to Alabama, and then he ended up not playing there. He goes to Tennessee, and I'm like, okay, we get another receiver, but he ends up not playing a game for the Vols this year. Um, he's got 4 years of eligibility left, so yeah, so not really a big surprise there that he's not really going to be able to that he's not going to play. Um, and Braylon Harmon, Lance Hurd, of course, that transfer from 2024 from LSU. I feel like he did good on the offensive line, but I just feel like I just don't think he was as good as we thought. Like that's just my opinion because he let a bunch of guys get by him though. Bennett Warren, of course, announced he is transferring to Minnesota, and and if I didn't say sorry, Max Gilbert, of course, transferring to Arkansas. Colin Brazel, Tommy Winton, Max Anderson, Herb Gray, Trevor Duncan, Peyton Lewis, Jake Merklinger, and we'll talk more about that here in a second. Marcus Gore Jr., Brendan Ains, Kellen Lindstrom, Jamal Wallace, and of course Boo Carter, who I'm just gonna say honestly, I saw Boo leaving for a while because after the little incidents like during the summer and stuff, like he was only returning punts, and so I just think that it's not surprising to see Boo in the portal, and he actually entered it I think with like 2 games remaining in the season. So yeah, and Merklinger, the one I want to talk about. And Max, I know I've asked this like so many times, but I want to know what your stance is saying because of the fact, Joey Aguilar is now a defendant on the. I'm sorry, not a defendant. He's now in on the lawsuit that originally started by Diego Pavia for extra eligibility. If because Aguilar, keep in mind, has only played at junior colleges, which is not associated with the NCAA, and he ends up, you know, he's now on the list for this court case. If this court case does not work for Tennessee, do you think Tennessee gives McIntyre a chance or Faison a chance because Faison's coming in, or do you think they get someone from the portal?
So rumors guys saying Ty Simpson gets linked with Tennessee if he does send a clay for the draft. So guys say we get Simpson.
Honestly, I can honestly see Simpson going to Tennessee because he is from Westview, Tennessee. Um, but however, I really do not think of course, that when we see Merklinger though, he was kind of like Gaston Moore. He was never going to start, I don't think. Um, and I just think that of course with the quarterback situation, that's the other thing as well. So I do believe that if Ty Simpson were to come to Tennessee, that solves one problem. But if Aguilar, but that's if Aguilar loses the case, and if Aguilar wins the case and you end up trying to get Ty Simpson to Tennessee, what do you do with that? I personally think that it's going to be a heated competition. That's just in my opinion. But yeah, so that's just so really it's just kind of we just got to wait and see really on that. That's just all I really have to say on that. But yeah. So do you have any other thoughts on the portal, like what Tennessee should look for and things like that?
I think we should get more defensive guys, get more receivers.
Yeah, I really think so as well because the defense really is a must. They need to get some guys from portal, which honestly, I'm honestly not going to be surprised if we start to see a lot of Penn State guys start entering the portal and then coming over here. Um, and I really think that, getting a bunch of guys from Penn State, of course, would help out because, in my opinion, like now, Penn State didn't really have the season that they had hoped this year, but I do think, of course, getting guys with experience under Jim Knowles' system would be amazing because they can help teach the other defensive guys on what Jim Knowles is looking for and what they need to do in order to get ready for game day and what else they got to do. So that's really why I think, getting Penn State guys would be good. And I wouldn't be surprised if we start seeing them like start flooding in basically. And yeah, so that's just all I got to that's just all I got to say on that. And of course, with Tennessee though, is that I just feel like there's been so much that could have been accomplished this season. I just feel like just ended up not going their way. But however, I have to say this though, there's always room for growth, and I feel like that if they can figure things out in the offseason, of course you've got a whole lot of time to figure things out, and you still got like the portal still, and after the portal, that's when you start to see, okay, how do you think this is going to go, and then of course when we do the schedule predictions video, which from what I remember, Tennessee will be playing. They'll be playing Furman, which is FCS, then travel to Georgia Tech. I mean, um, and they then play Kennesaw State, and then of course it's the start of the 9-game SEC schedule, the first year that this is happening, and so you get a bunch of guys that you're now for Tennessee, instead of playing like the same opponents, you're playing teams you probably haven't played in years, and that's really what I think is going to make 2026 all really worth watching, because you don't know how they're going to play, and you don't know what they're going to do against these teams. So yeah, it's honestly been, you know, and also another thing is this. Another thing that's going to look different, like we mentioned at the beginning of the show, is the Adidas uniforms, and honestly, I just hope that they look amazing. In my opinion, they're probably going to look like Miami's uniforms, I think. And honestly, that's kind of what I'm hoping they look like, because I just can't see them spelling out Tennessee across the chest area. And also I don't really even like that style either, honestly. And also I don't. Uh, are you a fan of that style? Just curious. Like where they just spell out the school good, because I was about to say that does not even look that good in my opinion. Now I do think, of course, that it's probably going to be like something like this, where you have you know like where you see the check mark here. It's basically just gonna. I think it's gonna be like this, where the stripes are on there, and then yeah, like the block numbers. That's basically what I think. But we'll wait until April, and hey, we'll even include them in the schedule predictions video. So yeah, and all right, that's all I've got. So unless you got anything to add, uh, I think we're done for the day. Um, all right, so that's gonna end the video, guys. If y'all like this video, give it a like, subscribe for more college football content. With that being said, God bless, and have a good night, and have a good New Year.